the
We've got a lot of interest from some people here who obviously spend a lot of time in the gym with tattoos. So they've seen it already. They're enthusiastic. Once they've ridden it, they all come back with a smile with flies in their teeth.
Welcome to the Weekly Defence Podcast, the show about defence procurement and military technology. We are brought to you in partnership with our sponsor Nammo. I'm your host Helen Haxall, coming to you this week from a swelteringly hot West London. On the show this week, we speak to AAR Corporation about its support of the US Navy's PA-8A Poseidon, and head deep into the UK countryside to attend the Three Counties Defence and Security Expo, otherwise known as 3CDSE event, to see what Special Forces technologies were on display. And our sponsor Nammo provides this week's Industry Voice segment. But first, our weekly news roundup, and I'm joined by Richard Thomas, Sea Editor.
Hi, Helen.
Kate Marter, our land reporter.
Hi, Helen.
To discuss what caught their eye this week. Now, this week has had an iconic anniversary. It is indeed 50 years since Apollo 11, which was the first space flight that had humans land on the moon. Now, Commander Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were both American. So what better or more fitting way to start our news roundup this week, but perhaps the discussion on sovereign capabilities, and more particularly the UK. Now, the reason I bring this up, I this week attended the RIAT 2019 held by the Air League in Parliament, Air and Space Inspiring the Next Generation Air Force. Now, this event was hosted by a parliamentarian and had industry leaders from Lockheed Martin to Airbus to Rolls-Royce, and as well as defence commentators. And they were looking at research and development, technologies and different ways that the human element can be brought into this field and really promoting that next generation Air Force. Now, one of the key topics or even challenges that was looked at was the representation of the UK's sovereign capability. Now, within the air domain, we've discussed this quite a lot recently with our air reporter Tim Martin. In the last 12 months, we've had the championing from the British with regards to the future fighter system, which is known as Tempest. Now, it's being led by a wealth of companies with British backgrounds, such as BAE Systems. There's also been discussion in recent months of international companies like Saab, which is Swedish, that might get involved. Now, putting to one side air, Type 26, Richard, has been quite a good example, I would say, of UK sovereign capability. Would you not agree?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to bring it to the moon landings, to talk about a sovereign capability, I think, the fact that Apollo 11 should be held up as the paradigm for such a capability, the fact that you've managed to land your own citizens on another celestial body is quite impressive. But bringing it back down to earth with the naval side of things, thanks. It's good, wasn't it? The UK has always had or always strove to ensure that it has that sovereign design capability for its warships. It's able to, even now, even these times of quite sort of straitjacketed fiscal environment that we're working in, it's able to design, develop and manufacture everything that from aircraft carriers, submarines, right down to patrol vessels. So it's worked to ensure it has that capability, even though it probably isn't able to really manufacture the critical mass that maybe the service needs.
Or manufacture any spaceships, Richard.
No spaceships for the Royal Navy yet.
But I guess on the UK side, in terms of land sovereign capability, we don't really see the same that you have in terms of in the sea or the air domain. So you have the Challenger 2 modernisation programme, but that's a modernisation. Obviously, they recently announced their joint venture with Rheinmetall, so that's the German influence. You have the Warrior upgrade programme, and then you have Boxer as well, but that's obviously through the OCAR framework, which is also European. But then when I think back in, I guess, way back in history, you see kind of Imperial Britain was always developing warships, and potentially because they're an island rather than sort of being in the middle of a great landmass, whereas maybe somewhere like Germany, obviously right in the middle of Europe, has maybe kind of more wants to develop their land capability in that way.
I find it amazing that the UK almost literally wrote the book on armoured warfare with the development of the Mark IV female and male, I think that's right, at the back end of World War One, and for them to go from that starting point to developing some fairly decent armoured vehicles throughout the Cold War, to a point where now it seems to have allowed that capability to lapse, is remarkable. I think it's a definite loss for industry not to be able to do that in-house.
I think that was also one of the key contentious discussion points in Parliament for the Next Generation Air Force debate. And one of the things that was one thing that rose, should I say, was the dichotomy between industry and government. Now, government obviously has its purse strings tight. We've spoken about the US Congress budget as well in previous podcasts. But how much money is government willing to spend on research and development which can further progress military programs where we're not just relying on industry? And I raise this because another key forum of discussion was that industry wants to know what the government wants, and the government wants to know more about what industry has. And there seems to be this kind of mismatch in the narrative between these two entities. And I'm just intrigued to how this can move forward. I mean, this is obviously a bigger and wider debate than just the podcast, but it's just interesting how things are moving along with these major programs. And especially when we consider, particularly with the UK, we have Brexit happening with the withdrawal of the UK from the EU. And now politicians are spouting out about this global Britain. Kate, you mentioned about Rheinmetall there with the Challenger modernisation programme. We've potentially got Sweden involved with the Tempest Air programme. It's just quite fascinating.
Well, I guess whether that... So industry and government were originally together, and they sort of split because there was this drive or this idea that private industry would drive progress, would drive innovation, and you'd have multiple different companies in competition with each other. But then how that's developed, and in a way because governments are awarding these big contracts as well, is that then you have kind of one or a sort of smaller group of companies being awarded lots more contracts, and then that cuts down on this competition, on this sort of innovation as well. So I guess there you have this kind of mismatch between what was meant to be driving industry forward and then that government was able to pick up on. And now it's kind of this, I guess, government and one company usually in a bit of a bind between someone has the policy and someone else maybe has the innovation, but it's not also being driven forward at the rate that it was intended to initially.
I guess also, without trying to seem, too protectionist, but I guess one of the major issues that can come across for major national programs or protecting sovereign capabilities is if you do open it up to a more international market, you obviously want the best technology for your war fighters. But if, say, you do open it up more internationally, are SMEs, small and medium enterprise companies, or even smaller than that, they might not benefit from these major programs that can be used by their national militaries. Just a thought there from me. But anyway, moving on from this debate, I'm sure our listeners have got plenty they can add to that debate with us. But for now, Richard, we've got a bit of news on the seaside.
Absolutely. Talking about sovereign capabilities, I was invited by Naval Group to attend the launch ceremony for Suffren. That's the first in class of the Suffren class nuclear-powered attack submarines that was launched in Cherbourg a few days back. So this is obviously the first of the nuclear-powered Barracuda design from Naval Group. And there'll be 5 other boats launched within the next few years, several years, I should say, decades. It's a fixed price program. It's a $9.1 billion for the 6 boats, and they will replace the 6 aging Rubis class SSNs that were in service with the French Navy. There are only 4 left in service at the moment.
Richard, did Macron ever come out of the submarine? I saw your tweet.
President Emmanuel Macron did indeed. He spent an inordinate amount of time in the sub. Obviously, there's an awful lot to see and do in there. He did emerge, and he had a few things to say. Mentioned that France was a country that works in the long term, which was in reference to the time taken to develop such a capability. Adding to that, he said that countries that could carry out a project such as Barracuda were rare, and that France stood as a great industrial, maritime and military nation as a result.
So bearing in mind what we were just talking about, Richard, sovereign capability, so is the Barracuda predominantly a French system, shall we say?
It sure is, and that was a point that Macron was very keen to make. It's interesting to compare and contrast that to the UK's Astute programme that had to lean heavily on General Electric in the US to get that up and running, or back on track, I should say.
Kate, over to the land side. What have you got for us?
This week I've got a story from Gordon Arthur in Roehampton, and he's been reporting on the US-Australian-led exercise Talisman Sabre. Japan was participating, but interestingly, they've dramatically upscaled their contribution to the exercise. So from last time, which was 2 years ago, they've gone from 50 to 300 soldiers participating in a beach assault, and they all came ashore on amphibious AAV-7s and a hovercraft as well. So that took place on the 16th of July. And significantly, this is the first time that the Japanese Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigades participated. This Rapid Deployment Brigades are a 3,000-strong specialist brigade. Obviously, not all 3,000 of them took part in the exercise. But they were only established last year, and their main duties were basically set up to keep an eye on the remote islands of Japanese territory to the south of the mainland Japan.
Yeah, I think these are the Senkaku Islands, I think, if my geography is right. For me, it's noticeable that countries in Asia-Pacific have made such an effort to develop amphibious assault capabilities. And the fact that Japan wants to test its newly created force during this exercise, I think points towards an area where it is focusing on and concerned for what might happen in the future. Yeah,
they're definitely concerned. I went to the International Armoured Vehicles Conference back in January this year, and a spokesperson from the Japanese MOD was saying that was placing a lot of emphasis as well, not only on the Japanese Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigades, but also hopefully on their new amphibious capability that they're developing, that they'll also be testing in autumn this year. So that's definitely going to be one to watch and see how that develops in the future.
And what sovereign capabilities end up on the platform, I imagine.
Absolutely, Helen, absolutely.
Thank you, Kay, and thank you, Richard, for your insights this week. If you'd like to know more from our news team here at Shephard, please do visit our website, shephardmedia.com. Coming up on the podcast, we speak to Brian Sartain, SVP of Repair and Engineering at AAR Corporation, about the company's support to the US Navy and other opportunities. But first, Tony Skinner, our VP of Content, gets well outside his London comfort zone to attend the Three Counties Defence and Security Expo to discover the defence innovation that was on show. We wanted to take time out from the podcast to tell you about a more recent addition to Shephard Media. Our new series of market forecasts enables you to understand both the broader competitive landscape and finer details of various sectors of the defence industry. Each one identifies the demand for platforms, programmes and equipment in each sector and across each region. We have gathered this information together into a large database, and from that we have compiled the reports, which project our view of the equipment and procurement market over the next 10 years. To date, we have produced market forecasts on the armoured vehicles and naval vessels markets. We have just released our military unmanned systems market forecast. And later in the year, we plan to release 10-year forecasts on the military aircraft and artillery and air defence markets. To find out more, please email subs@shephardmedia.com or visit our website.
Cybersecurity, mind control technology, and the future of warfare. This is the tagline for the Three Counties Defence and Security Expo, which we're attending today. We're at a site in Malvern, about 3 hours outside of London. The event is situated here partly because of the number of defence companies that are situated nearby, but also the fact that its proximity to Hereford, which is the home base of the UK's SAS. It's a little bit of an open secret that there's a strong Special Forces focus of the event. Looks like a busy first morning already, so let's get out there and take a look. So I'm here with Richard Morgan, who's the president of the Three Counties Defence and Security Group, who are holding the event today. Richard, I've just got in my car and driven 3 hours out of London. There's a lot of companies here today. How did you manage to attract this many companies to an event like this, sort of outside one of the main sort of centres of the country?
Okay, so this event has been adopted by MOD as a vehicle for their own security industry, defence and security industry briefings for the year, and they see this as a very unique event. The geography is significant because this is the Joint Forces Special Projects team who supplies Special Forces, and they see this Three Counties area with all the innovation spawned by Special Forces in Hereford, by GCHQ in Cheltenham, by Kinetic in Malvern, as the centre of defence innovation for that Special Projects area of defence. So they see us as a perfect partner to draw together all of that innovation, to be able to share best practice and ideas, new technology, new projects, and for MOD to understand the capabilities of all the SMEs in the sector.
I mean, as you walk around, there's clearly a focus on innovation, and the Special Forces application for most of the companies are rather obvious.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that strikes me is the fact that we've got some well-established players, the big defence primes, but a number of SMEs and a number of companies that I've never sort of come across before.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that was the intent, to sort of give those smaller companies the access to the MOD, the guys who are kind of working out of Hereford.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the MOD contracts managers are all over the floor. But there's also supply chain issues here. So this is a true level playing field where big primes like Ultra Electronics, Thales and Kinetic can sit comfortably side by side with SME innovators from the Three Counties. And no one gets pushed out to the fringes by giant central displays that none of those smaller companies could afford. They really are on an equal footing, and this makes this show unique from that point of view, but also because of its exclusive focus on that bespoke technology for the Special Forces community and the specialist agencies to which this region is home.
Well, Richard, thanks for your time, and we look forward to wandering around and finding out more.
Good to see you. Thank you very much.
So among the companies on the show floor is Ultra Electronics. I'm with Tony White, who's the Chief Technology Officer for Land Systems at Ultra Electronics. Tony, this afternoon you're about to give a presentation on the use of brainwaves technology as a soldier-borne piece of kit. Kind of sounds fascinating. What is this all about?
Okay, for about the last 6 years, we've been working on some technology known colloquially as man-worn power and data. And we have a hub which allows us to interconnect devices that the soldier might wear. And typically those devices are a radio and a GPS and some kind of visualization, which is an end-user device that allows him to see maps or the status of the battlefield. My job as CTO has been looking at the kind of future technologies that we could also integrate and how they might apply. One of those technologies I've been tracking is a thing called brain-computer interfacing, which allows us to measure the brain waves that an individual generates and do two things. One, give an indication of their well-being, so we can measure brain waves and give an idea of how stressed they are or how engaged they are, how prepared or happy they are to do the task in hand. And the other is then to take those brain waves and use them to control things. So you can have repeatable thoughts like think up or down or left or right, and we can map those through our ultra-linked soldier hub to devices we've got connected. So we can do things like think up or down to change the channel on the radio, or we can think left or right to maybe control a device, and that device can be a drone or an unmanned ground vehicle. So this afternoon I'll be showing on stage someone controlling a 3D cube on the screen and how they can move the cube around the screen by thought and thought alone.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I mean, given a soldier that's under a lot of pressure, under a stressful situation, maybe is operating a weapon, this is going to allow them to be completely hands-free to, as you say, change channels, operate some of their sort of soldier-borne kit.
Yeah, Gartner, the survey company, have a technology curve. BCI, brain-computer interfacing, is probably 10 years out from being commonly available to you and I in the high street. But we've got hardware today and software today, and we're showing how you might be able to apply that technology today using things like Ultralinks to act as that interface or gateway between the devices. It's by no means ready to field operationally. We're still in that kind of experimental stage. We're still in that development stage, very much in concept study. One of the things that I get asked about a lot is distraction. So if I'm flying a drone and a lady walks by, what happens? And so being able to stay on task and keep those thoughts on task is all part of the game. So we've got a neuroscientist working with us, and she's teaching some interesting techniques about how to think and stay on task to keep those thoughts exactly where you want them to be.
And are you guys talking with the MOD, with sort of services, armed forces, about future applications, or is the kind of launch today the sort of the start of that conversation?
Yeah, so we've been doing this work now for about the last 18 months in the office. We've had about 45 people through the office using it and wearing it and then doing kind of informal trials. This is the first time now we're going live and telling people about it outside of the business.
Well, Tony, fascinating stuff. We look forward to hearing more. Good luck with the presentation this afternoon.
Thanks very much. It's going to be fun.
So I'm here with Alex Giles, who, amongst other things on his colourful CV, used to be my former boss at Shephard. Alex, you're now with...
Don't hold that against me, buddy.
You're now with Iceni Labs, and a little bird tells me you're doing some interesting things in terms of a radar that can see humans breathing through a wall. Yes. Is that a fair reflection?
That is absolutely a fair reflection. It is a sense through the wall technology. We have been developing it for a couple of years now, first of all for medical applications, and we've been working with Royal Papworth Hospital in Cambridge, and it's being used there to monitor people with sleep apnea. So we're in clinical trials. We have about 200-300 people now, patients have been tested against the standard now in the NHS, which is a contacted, banded system where you have all the sensors connected to you, and that's very difficult to get data from when your children in particular who throw the bands off in the night, so all the data's wasted. So the NHS has been looking for a non-contact system. We're hoping to take that in its medical form to market at the end of the year. But then we took that technology to the Defence Accelerator, to the DASA process. We demonstrated it to them. We demonstrated it then to an MOD customer who was very interested. And we were awarded the 8th or I think 9th for a rapid impact contract ever to be awarded, which is a relatively new scheme where you need a sponsor for your technology, and they can award you up to £250,000, which they were kind enough to award us under contract. And we are now developing that technology, SafeScan, for this British customer, where we hope to be going into service about Q3 of next year.
So in a military context, this would enable soldiers to look through a wall effectively, see how many people are on the other side, maybe work out whether they're stressed or not. Is that the ideal?
In the version that we're bringing to market now, it's a bit simpler than that, in that we're just essentially detecting, first of all, that there is movement, that there is presence behind a door, behind cover, and then making an assessment shortly after that that's actually a breathing rate. So it's not just general movement. We're indicating there are individuals back there. There is a roadmap going forward that would begin to add in a lot of the things that you've just said, and that's probably still 2 or 3 years away of development, but that's certainly the direction of travel you want to get to.
Well, we look forward to when you can talk about your customer or your customers. We look forward to finding out more.
You know, Shephard will always be the first people to know.
Good to hear. Thanks, Alex. So among the companies that are on display at the Three Counties Defence and Security Expo is Prometheus Medical. They've got quite a striking stand here. We've got what looks like a simulated amputated leg on the stand, as well as some medical kit. I'm here with Smudge Smith, who's the Defence and Security salesman for the company. Smudge, tell us a little bit about the company itself. I mean, I understand you've got a sort of special forces background in terms of how the company was founded.
Yeah, I was actually in the SAS, and the company was formed by Dr. Malcolm Russell, who was the senior medical officer in the SAS in the early 2000s, and it was started as a training company. Prometheus Medical is now a leading supplier of pre-hospital emergency care equipment and high-quality training to a wide audience, including a lot of people in the defence and security industry.
And just run us through what sort of kit you've got on display here. I mean, you've got a backpack here that looks pretty handy for medics.
Yep, this is the new Lacuna Medical Easy Access Bergen, which is designed as purely as a medical Bergen for medics to be able to access their medical equipment quickly. Would you like me to give you?
Yeah, could you give us a demonstration there?
Okay, on the top there is a pouch that you can go to get your go-to kit like tourniquets and chest seals out. But if you needed more equipment, you undo these catches, and as you can see, it opens out to get all the equipment out that you need handily.
And just for the listener, that took a couple of seconds just to unzip, and now we've got all the kit that a medic would need, including detachable sort of packs on each side. So, and Smudge, I kind of noticed that you've got the public access bleed control kit. You know, what's the story behind this one?
Okay, with all the stabbings that are going on and violence going on in our cities, we've put together a public access bleed control kit that can be in pubs and clubs and other cafes and stuff like that, that if someone gets injured nearby, at least someone will be able to do something before the ambulance arrives and hopefully save their lives.
So essentially it's like a big seal that would sort of that would block the puncture wounds.
Yep. Within the kit there is a chest seal, a tourniquet and a hemostatic dressing that when applied and pressure puts on, it forms a blood clot and hopefully stops the catastrophic bleeding in time.
And in terms of your presence at the show, I guess this is a good chance for you to get close to the user community, you know, chat to the MOD, sort of see what other companies are doing.
We have contracts with the MOD and we'd like a few more, obviously. We also supply kit to a lot of security companies around Britain and abroad. So we're hoping to see them here and come have a look and try our kit out.
Sure. Smudge, very impressive kit. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to just try and describe what I'm looking at right now. Essentially, what we've got here on the show floor is what I'll describe as a extreme four-wheel drive adult motorized scooter. It's called the Easy Raider. It looks like it's essentially a pimped up bit of kit for extreme leisure or for military purposes. I'm here with Glenn Brown, who's just going to run us through exactly what the Easy Raider is and what its capabilities are.
So we talk about the start point with Easy Raider. So it's an SME startup established by some Israeli Defense Force vets with some government funding. And what they identified in designing their business model was the fact that quads started essentially as a leisure platform and then migrated into industry and agriculture and then eventually the military. So if you wanted to make a military product, you had to have money in the bank, particularly if you're an SME. So they designed a leisure version to begin with. So they do have a low-end leisure version, which is two-wheel drive. The suspension is downgraded, but it's still a very capable platform and still great fun. This is the top of the range. This is four-wheel drive with an electric motor on each hub. It's got a 3,000 watt-hour battery under the kick plate. That means that the center of gravity is extremely low, so it's almost impossible to tip one of these over. If you do manage to tip it, if you're that determined, and you do manage to tip it over, you don't have your Ozzy Osbourne moment. It isn't going to roll over on you and crush you as a quad would. Furthermore, compared with quads, particularly in the military and security environments, it's entirely silent. The only thing you hear on this thing as it's moving is sometimes a very muted clunk from the advanced suspension, the suspension which, by the way, gives you 50 centimeters of wheel travel, so it'll cross rocky terrain, and if it won't cross rocky terrain under its own power, then you can lift it, just as you can lift it into a platform. As I say, I brought this down in my Toyota SUV myself, using a plywood ramp yesterday, and I'll take it back like that tonight. I won't need a hand. It'll do it under its own steam.
And just for the listener, I just in terms of the stability of the platform, I have stood on it. I tried to rock it back and forwards, and I wasn't able to tip it over, certainly.
Yeah, no, it's entirely stable. It folds, so the control station, the control stem folds down, so it becomes 66 centimeters in height. One of the great differentiators between this and a quad, and it's not often thought of, but in a security marketplace, is the fact that this will go through a standard door. It's 66 centimeters wide, from edge of rubber to edge of rubber. So I drove it in, not through double doors, and through the tickets, the ticket stalls at the end there, sure, much to everyone's amusement. So if you can imagine then in a counter-terrorist operation, this has great utility in subways, shopping malls, and the like.
What kind of range are we talking about?
We're talking about 80 kilometers before a recharge is necessary. And that will vary. If you're climbing the Alps in it, it's probably closer to 50. Sure. But the battery is essentially a hot swap in as much as you just take the 6 studs out. If you've got a spare battery in the trailer or on your person, because they're not that heavy, you can swap it out within about 10 minutes. We're working with the company on a true military hot swap capability.
And I should say that you're working with Elite Special Projects on this platform.
Working with Elite Special Projects and Chris Williams on this particular project, yes.
Any customers you can talk about at this point?
We've got a lot of interest from some people here who obviously spend a lot of time in the gym with tattoos. So we'll see how those... They've seen it already. They're enthusiastic. We've got to get past the emotional sort of unconscious bias of it looks like a Segway. But once they've ridden it, they all come back with a smile with flies in their teeth. So... we think it has legs because you can covertly deploy this thing out of a rotary wing platform. You could probably, whereas on a CH-47, I think you can only fit 3 present quads, you could probably, using a racking system for this, probably fit about 12 in. Sure. So that's 4 times the mobility. It carries nearly a half a ton with a trailer. It has huge tactical potential. We just need to bring it up to military standard. It's not there quite yet, but it won't be long.
And you may have said, what's the type of speed of this?
It's limited to 50 kilometers an hour. And that's more than enough, trust me. More than enough to make you smile. Anything more, you start grimacing, I suspect.
Well, Glenn, certainly one of the more interesting bits of kit on display here at the show, so thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
So one of the main sponsors of the event is a company called Level Peaks, and I'm sat with Leanne Harley, who is the operations manager for the company. Leanne, I understand Level Peaks is comprised mainly of ex-service members, and you guys supply a range of equipment to the Special Forces, kind of to the military. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit and just tell us a little bit about the company?
Okay, so we're a small and growing private defence company in the local area, based in Hereford. We are founded by ex-military personnel who have a great passion for kitting capability and getting the right equipment to the right people to do their jobs. Since So the reason for our sponsorship today and being a headline sponsor is that we wanted to get our name out there, our OEMs' names out there, showing, you know, what capability and what kit and equipment were available to the UK MOD, the Special Forces, the police, and other members of government and procurement.
So is it fair to say that as a company you're providing very bespoke, kind of niche pieces of equipment for a particular needs, you know, to the end user?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a mixture of the customer comes to us with a requirement, and we go out and source their needs. Sometimes we can offer things that they actually don't realise they always need until we offer it to them. And also in the other ways that, you know, we do developments with other companies and where they've got technology, bespoke niche capabilities, and we offer those out to our main customers, being mainly UK MOD, Special Forces and the police.
So it's this kind of event is obviously perfect for you guys in terms of engaging with the MOD, you know, engaging with sort of wider industry and, you know, chatting to other kind of members of the company. It seems like you've had a good couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. The weather being obviously a great addition to that, because we've been able to do our demonstrations in glorious weather where our users and visitors and suppliers can all take part and have a go.
And what we can hear in the background is the shots being fired of that's a piece of your equipment, I guess, for training purposes. But.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is our pepper ball equipment. It is a less than lethal capability used for crowd control, prison service, and multitude of things to come.
And unsurprisingly, in this crowd, there's some good shots out there from what I've seen so far. So, Leanne, thanks for your time.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
So that was our day out at the Three Counties Defence and Security Expo. In terms of that theme of innovation, the event certainly delivered a range of great technologies on display, all with obvious Special Forces applications. Really good seeing some of the smaller SMEs, smaller companies maybe looking to break into the defence sector, allocated space alongside some of the main defence primes. A lot of delegations walking the floor, a lot of uniforms. I'm sure there are a number of service personnel and civvies as well. Yeah, we learnt a lot. Now it's time to get in the car and head back to London.
After almost 40 years in the defence publishing business here at Shephard Media, we have built up a strong and loyal audience across all sectors. Our content is trusted and consumed by key decision makers through multiple channels. One benefit of having such a dedicated audience base is our ability to offer a comprehensive range of message delivery options for the discerning advertiser. From brand awareness campaigns across a combination of print and digital media, through targeted email campaigns or show dailies, to a plethora of online opportunities, or even advertising opportunities within this podcast itself. If you'd like to learn more, please visit shephardmedia.com/advertising to discover more about the many advertising options available.
So I'm here at the Paris Air Show 2019. We're under the shadow of the P-8A Poseidon, which is that reassuring hum you can hear in the background. I'm here with Brian Sartain, who is the Senior Vice President of MRO for AAR Corporation. Brian, now we've got the P-8A Poseidon behind us, and I know you guys are doing some important overhaul work. Could you just kind of give us a background on what that program is and how you guys are involved?
Sure. No, appreciate the opportunity. Back in 2018, we won an IDIQ, which is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract for the government for 7 years to do heavy maintenance visits for the P-8 fleet. So we've got 2 lines of maintenance, nose to tail. There's always 2 P-8s in Indianapolis in our hangar there, undergoing full heavy maintenance visits, and that means stripping it down to the stringers, repainting the aircraft, taking care of everything that this aircraft needs, in 4-year interval checks. So very heavy stuff.
What's the future of that program? So how does it kind of lead on to sort of future work?
So for the P-8, we compete every year with Boeing. So the fleet is split between 2 providers, ourselves and Boeing. And then at the end of the year, we take a scorecard of how on time our deliveries have been, what our cost basis has been, and how efficient we were to work with. So basically every year the Navy decides who gets to do the most work. We feel like we've been a low-cost provider. All of our airplanes are, knock on wood, continuing to be on time. So the intention for us is to take the P-8 and get a larger share of the aircraft because we've got plenty of space in Indianapolis and a highly qualified workforce to do so, and then leverage that into other potential airframe contracts.
In terms of the work that you guys are doing, just run us through step by step what kind of work is actually undertaken.
Sure. I mean, the P-8's a unique platform, right? It's a 737, but it's a special 737. So, the way a visit comes when an aircraft comes into the hangar, the first thing we have to do is take a completely top secret cleared workforce and go and take all the secret stuff and lock it in a room. So that's one of the aspects of this which makes it different than a normal 737. So once we've secured all of the sensitive government assets and put everything that needs to be locked away, it takes on the profile of a normal maintenance visit, where we open up the interior, the galley areas, we open up the engines, we do a general inspection, and then the Navy puts together a work package that we follow step by step by step. When we do that, though, we find things. And, this is a unique aircraft. They're carrying heavy things around. Sometimes they drop those heavy things. There's a lot of damage to the interior that isn't typical of a normal aircraft. So we go back with our engineering group and we develop solutions to try and find ways to avoid that happening in the future. Then once we've determined all the work that needs to be done on the aircraft, sometimes we strip it down to the stringers. If we have to do some structural repair, we complete that. We put it back together, and probably the most painstaking aspect of the visit is painting the aircraft. You might not think that painting the aircraft is a big deal, but on a U.S. Navy aircraft, the paint has to be perfect. There's very special markings on the aircraft, and we spend weeks upon weeks making sure that the paint is absolutely perfect and absolutely durable, because the aircraft takes a lot of use. So then we put it all back together. The government comes in, the Navy and DCMA takes a look at it for about 3 days and inspects every single aspect of it. Usually they tell us we did a great job, and they bring a crew in and fly it away.
And I guess the P-8's seen success in terms of export customers, and that's kind of continuing to grow. Are you guys kind of in line for some of that maintenance work potentially on an international scale?
If foreign governments want to utilize an FMS scheme or some other type of scheme, we're happy to do that work. But right now, I really envision that most of those maintenance visits will be done in theater, with the assistance of some of our GO teams if necessary. But we don't anticipate having a lot of foreign work in Indianapolis. Long way to fly in the airplane.
And if we look at the sort of wider military MRO business, what other activities are you guys currently undertaking?
Well, so from a corporate standpoint, from MRO, we're working on, we have a performance-based logistics program with Hill Air Force Base, where we actually do all of the landing gear for the platforms that are operated out of Hill. So instead of the depot doing the maintenance, they've outsourced that to us with a public-private partnership. And we do that maintenance in our Miami facility. It's greatly improved the readiness of the fleet and on-time delivery. It's been good for us. But the greater AAR Corporation does a number of things for the U.S. government. I mean, we call it Wide Area Support Services, but really that's an airline that delivers U.S. troops and U.S. assets to austere environments. We operate, like Iraq and Kuwait and many different theaters, some in Africa, that we deliver both troops and equipment and structure and platform, and actually provide that service to the U.S. government. In addition, we do a lot of engine overhaul and leasing for many different portions. So we're really focused as a corporation on ways that we can serve the U.S. government, especially foreign governments as well. But lately, we've really been specializing in that area.
And what about you work on composites? Is that something that sort of touches into your area?
Yeah, so we have a couple of manufacturing businesses that report into my particular vertical, and the composites area is one of them. And so we've got a quite capable composites shop in Florida where we've typically done, original manufacturing for BizJet programs, for the A220, for the F-22, and many Sikorsky helicopter platforms. what we're doing there is we're actually reopening our repair center so that we can do actually repair and overhaul of composite structures like thrust reversers, control surfaces, that are really becoming in relatively short supply as many of the fleets age. You look at those elevators and the rudders and all those large control surfaces, I mean, those are all composites. Those aren't made of aluminum. And that's a specialized type of repair that you need to have. And the market really wants more of that right now. So we're going to expand into that area as well.
And I guess at Shephard we run 2 helicopter magazines, and we know AAR primarily through some of the airlift services that you've been providing over the sort of last decade. You know, how is that business currently structured, and what's the activity there?
So we really got 4 pillars of the business. We've got an OEM distribution, a parts, a used parts and overhaul portion. We've got the MRO portion, which is what I run, and then we've got a government services group, which Nick Gross, my fellow VP runs. And that business is actually, just recently won the Wide Area Support Services Program. They've expanded into multiple countries, Iraq, Kuwait, Africa. And that program's actually really going well, and we see more opportunities in the future. I'm sure Nick would tell you that he's got 3 or 4 new programs on waiting in the hangar, so to speak, to take off.
Sure, Brian, I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, welcome to this week's Industry Voice segment. This is the part of the show that's brought to you in partnership with our sponsor, Nemo. I'm Tony Skinner, VP of Content at Shephard Media, and I'm joined by regular contributor Andra Lond, who is the SVP of Communications for Nemo. Good morning, Andra.
Morning.
So this week we are going to be talking about NATO. Mm-hmm. It's obviously just celebrated its 70th birthday.
Happy birthday, NATO.
We could probably, fill a full podcast talking about the successes of the alliance. Obviously, most of those are well known. But, while we sort of reflect on the last 70 years, where do you think the alliance is going? Where do we go from here? What's the future of NATO? How does it build on its foundations? Given, the well-known political kind of uncertainty kind of lingering under the water, not too far under the waters at the moment.
Well, I think what NATO will build on and what really saved NATO during the years when there was no apparent external threat in the 90s is that it has also become so much more than just a safety guarantee or a defense guarantee. It is that integration. Mm-hmm. It is that close cooperation that's been there from the start. Before NATO was formed, every country had its own ammunition standards, had its own communication standards, had its own fuel, what have you. And I think that was very neatly demonstrated when in the 90s, the Partnership for Peace countries and former neutral East Bloc countries started cooperating more closely with NATO. You saw that incredible learning curve they had and how much of a transition it was for them to just start operating within the NATO structure. But the amount of work they had to do to achieve that just shows how much work that the NATO countries had actually put into becoming a kind of an integrated and more closely aligned force over the last 50 years before then. And to me that shows that's really the value has been. And as politics come and go, I think that is going to be one of the key things that keeps NATO a relevant and vital part of Western security.
These are things that today we largely take for granted, I guess. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talked about having a common caliber. I think most people would presume that was always the case,
Exactly.
And perhaps not realize NATO's role in fostering that.
It is essential, and it's something that people don't appreciate, don't see, because, like you said, we take it for granted. That's just how it has been. But if you ask a Swede or a Finn about the work they had to do in order to integrate more closely, so we're able to operate together with NATO, as late as in 2011 in the Libya operation, how Sweden and the Swedish Air Force, the challenge they had to try to operate and be part of that air coalition, that's taken a long time. But it's something that's deepened in the last couple of years. Even when in the late 90s in the Kosovo operations, that was one of the first times they actually had to operate as a force on a NATO command on an operation. And I think that also taught them a lot. Okay, there are a couple of things there to clean out. But then during the time they spent in Afghanistan, for instance, and the close cooperation there, that's really helped build an even tighter and closer alliance. They call it coalition, but it's still those countries, the close partnership countries that have built those relationships and integration, and that's in many ways just as valuable as that overall safety guarantee. Mm-hmm. And looking at it from industry perspective, it's really created that market, like a full market where it is possible for us to cooperate because we understand what the requirements are, we understand the native certification, we understand what the requirements and operations are, and that is essential as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, from an industry point of view, obviously working towards selling products with common protocols, common standards, common interfaces.
Essential.
Yeah, I mean, that can only be a good thing in terms of that widening of the market.
Yet also, for the buyers, you have a much wider potential industrial base to choose from and to lean on. Because what's happening at the same time is, of course, the technological innovation has happened. So it was just not possible for individual countries, even the larger powers, to do everything on their own. So they needed that wider industrial base. And that has been made possible thanks to the standardization and that common purpose that NATO has brought about. So in my opinion, it's been important and will remain important. And happy birthday, NATO. And I think you're going to still have a lot of good years ahead of you.
As an alliance, obviously with the political situation and some of the Russian aggression we've seen in various parts of that part of the world, the relevance of NATO is not disappearing anytime soon.
No, not at all. And both in terms of the security guarantee, but also in terms of that close network and partnership. Again, when the East European countries wanted to join after the Cold War, that was partly from a security guarantee, but also because that just meant that close relationship and ability to integrate and be part of something.
Sure.
And that's really its biggest attraction today, and why I think so many European countries continue to focus so heavily on it, that it just gives them that framework. It gives them that the vehicle for cooperation that they can build on and use.
So once again, happy birthday to NATO. It's been the bedrock of European security, that transatlantic defence partnership, and again, one that I'm sure we'll revisit in the future. So, Andrew, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
This episode of Shephard's Weekly Defence Podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, Namo. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please head over to shepherdmedia.com to access all our news stories and subscriber content. We'd love to hear what you thought of the podcast, so please do subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or other podcasting platforms. Thanks for listening.